discuss your amendment. Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, my amendment would strike section 3D of this bill, which imposes burdensome new fees on offshore pipeline operators. The bill's title, the Offshore Pipeline Safety Act, implies the goal of the legislation is to promote safety. But the $10,000 per mile fees imposed by this bill make clear that this legislation is part of the Democrats on this committee's broader goal to impose numerous fees and mandates until oil and gas companies can no longer operate profitably. The fees in this section will cause serious harm to America's energy industry and detract from the years of progress made under President Trump's administration. Under President Trump, America's energy production and innovation finally began to reach its full potential. For the first time in decades, America was a net exporter of energy. But in the span of 9 months since President Biden took office, much of that progress has been lost. President Biden wasted no time rolling back President Trump's successful policies. With the stroke of a pen, in the first days of his presidency, President Biden imposed a destructive moratorium on oil and gas leases on federal lands, which, by the way, the courts have ruled is illegal, shut down the Keystone XL pipeline, and began reviewing and rolling back many Trump-era energy policies that put us on a path to prosperity and self-reliance, costing jobs and tax revenue and an exasperating inflation. Make no mistake, this bill has nothing to do with pipeline safety. It's about fulfilling a radical environmentalist agenda, exporting American jobs, and eliminating fossil fuels. Pipelines are the safest mode of energy transportation, according to the U.S. Department of Transportation. And American companies and pipelines are already subject to many regulations designed to promote safety and to protect the environment. This bill will not make pipelines any safer, but it will hurt our nation's energy production at a time when our country can least afford it. There's not a single American who is free of the effects of rising gas prices, which has been fueled by this administration's attack on American energy. Rising oil prices affect the cost of virtually every consumer good. Plastics are petroleum byproducts and therefore heavily dependent on the price of oil. 2/3 of farm equipment are powered by diesel engines, meaning the cost of produce and food is somewhat dependent on oil cost. Not to mention nearly every good or product sold at retail stores is transported at some point by gasoline or diesel-powered vehicles. The Biden administration's anti-energy policies have driven oil prices up to their highest point in years. This Monday, oil closed at over $80 a barrel. The last time we saw prices this high was nearly 7 years ago in October of 2014. But instead of addressing rising oil prices and inflation, this committee is marking up a bill that would deceitfully impose crushing new fees under the guise of safety. The cost of such fees would inevitably be borne by the American consumer, again, hurting those who can least afford it the most. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment and strike this extremely damaging provision from this bill. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman,
Chairman Yales, anyone wish to be recognized?
Mr. Chairman, may I be